Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, it's another movie review, and this is once again a Patreon request from my friend John. If you want to be able to do requests yourself, you can join the Patreon down below, depending on the tier. You'll gain access to videos early, and you will also get a certain number of requests depending on the tier. If you want to just do a one-off request or support the channel, the PayPal link is down below. Now, planes, trains, and automobiles. It is considered by many to be the Thanksgiving film. And with that in mind, it might come as a surprise to some of you that I have never seen this film before. So this is another blind view. Now, not to say I don't know stuff about it. I mean, there's a handful of scenes in this movie that are constantly referenced or talked about. I mean, the bathroom scene where Steve Martin has the underwear instead of a towel. And then, of course, doing the mess around, amongst others. So, throughout this watch, I'm going like, okay, there's that one, and then letting the film fill in the dots in between. The film is written and directed by John Hughs, who was inspired to make this film after a particularly weird flight from New York to Chicago. It took him 5 days to get home after he was diverted to Wichita Falls. And being how he was, he's like, give me a second. He wrote the first draft in 3 days, which was at the minimum of his average at that time for a first draft, which was 3 to 5 days, which, when you think about how hard a screenplay is to write, that is pretty good. Now, let's see how long it would take him to do the novelization version of it. Film stars Steve Martin and John Candy as our main characters, Neil Page and Del Griffith, respectively. And apparently, this was the favorite film that either of them did of their own films, so that alone should tell you how good this film is if you know any of their filmography. Now, Steve, he joined the production after reading the screenplay, and it was 2 scenes in particular: the seat adjustments moment, and of course the infamous F-bomb car tirade, which is another one of the moments I knew about. I thought it happened earlier in the movie, so where it was, I'll say that I don't know if this is a PG-13 or an R film, but if it's an R, if you were to take that one scene out, this would be a PG or PG-13 movie. If it's not for that one scene, just all those F-bombs. Deadpool would be like counting how many there are. Now, before they joined the cast, Tom Hanks and John Travolta were considered for their leads. The reason they didn't get them is that Hanks was busy filming Big, another big box office success at the time. And Paramount didn't want Travolta because at this time he was considered box office poison. There is a reason his performance in Pulp Fiction is considered as a career revival, because following a certain Dance sequel in the 80s, his career might have had some other good successes, but I can't really think of any big films off the top of my head that he did in between that and this one. I think it was Saturday Night. I think Staying Alive is the name of it. Staying Alive, Staying Alive. Well, that's what happens in Hollywood. Just one thing, and they don't want to touch you. Until someone does take a chance on you. Other people in the film, we got Kevin Bacon in a small role at the beginning as a taxi racer. You got Lala Robbins playing Susan, who is Steve Martin's wife in the film. I mean, there's among others a bunch of other people. That's just all I put down on the cast right now. Now, the plot of the film is that Steve Martin's character, Neil, he's trying to get home from New York to Chicago for the holidays. And you know the old saying, anything that can go wrong will go wrong? That is an apt description of what happens. And a lot of it goes from inconvenient to, oh my God, really? First he's bumped from first class down to coach, which I would be mad at. I mean, if you buy the ticket in advance, they should honor it. But it happens, it happens. And, of course, he's stuck next to Del Griffith, John Candy, who happens to be the guy who stole his taxi earlier in the day, which is another thing. Their flight gets diverted. They have to spend the night in a motel room. Their motel gets robbed in the middle of the night, which I got a little thing to say about that in a bit. And then as they keep going home, they keep hitting inconvenience after inconvenience. Like at one point when they're renting a car, Steve Martin goes to the spot and there's no car in it, which is like, really, guys? You're going to be that bad with your paperwork? But things like that happen, which is why he has a tirade. While he's driving, John Candy sets their car on fire and they end up getting pulled over by the Marshalls, I believe it is. They do eventually make it home, so it does have a happy ending, and it's a very sentimental ending, mainly because of what we find out about the Griffith character, which it's hinted at throughout the course of the film, but it's not until the end that we find out. And it's one of the lessons also that Neil learns, because Neil, as he's on this trip with Dell, he notices, like, I haven't been home as much as I should. I haven't seen my family as much as I should. I probably should start seeing them. So it's a very Thanksgiving-esque message for the film, which is why I say this is a Thanksgiving film. And then we find from Del Griffith that he has been home in years, but it's a different situation because, unlike Neil, he has no one to go home to. His wife is gone. Doesn't really mention if he has any other family, or at least close family, so there's really no reason to go home. I mean, he has a home. Maybe every now and then he'll go home and just get off the road, or maybe he sold his house, sold any big things other than what he keeps in his trunk, and then probably just keeps going on the road as a door-to-door salesman and just goes that way, like a couple steps above vagrancy. And it is kind of a sad thing, but he does get a little bittersweet thing, because at the end, Neil does bring him home for Thanksgiving, so he does get a little bit of a happy moment. Makes you wonder what happens after that. Is Dell invited over every Thanksgiving after that? And like, hey, Uncle Dell's here! And he kind of becomes an honorary member of the family. I would like to think that's probably what happens afterwards. It's just one of those things where we leave right at the right moment with the film, to where it leaves you as the audience like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And of course it has that over sentimentality feeling, kind of like a little bit of the ending of Home Alone, only that one ends, on that last gag, Kevin, what did you do to my room? I mean, I just watched that one last night too, that's why I have that on the mind as I'm recording this. I didn't write down all of the trivia that I found when I was doing a little bit of the research for this film, but this is some of the interesting one. The opening flight scene reuses some footage from the movie Airplane, which I'm guessing if they already got in the can, why not use it, especially if it's the same type of plane and it's not too over the top. The rental agent phone dialogue was partially improvised. The actress, Eddie McClurgs, drew from real life, and she was basically told to, go and do whatever you want. And of course, because of how famous that part of the film is, people always went up to her to tell them that you're fucked. Which I can see why she says it with such enthusiasm and such ooh, that you're like, oh yeah. Mainly because, hey, if you lose the agreement, then you are. Now, there is technically an extended cut of this film. It technically exists, but not edited together. Is that most of this footage exists, as uncut footage somewhere in the Paramount vault. And Hughs, at one point before he passed, said you'd have to delve through the vault, and it would take years in order to construct it into a workable and viewable thing. Not to say that some of the other scenes aren't in a cut version. I mean, a couple of these scenes do pop up in the TV edit every now and then, and a couple of them were used in the theatrical trailer. Here's a couple of the scenes that I wrote down there in different parts of the trivia. There's a cut scene of them looking for a phone at a strip club, which would have been a funny moment, but it's one of those moments that as you're looking through the film, you're like, do we really need that one? And then you cut it. But for an extended cut would be funny. Dell singing like Elvis in the hotel room bathroom. Well, another little moment would have been fun, but I can see why they would cut it for pacing. And of course, as the one I mentioned earlier, the thief who stole their wallet, which in the final version of the film, it comes across as, hey, this is a rundown motel. This guy saw these two people coming in. He's going to break in, try to see what they got in their wallets and take it. But in the original version, he was going to be a pizza delivery boy that they ordered from that was stiffed on the tip. Seems to be a habit when it comes to it that sometimes the pizza delivery boys are stiffed on the tips. Yeah, but unlike the other one, this guy isn't given to the count of 3 to get his lousy, lying, no-dung, floor-flushing carcass off the door. Jerry Ryan, who you Star Trek fans out there will know as 7 of 9, had a role as an extra at one point. But her scene was cut out of the film, and Hughs later reshot it, because during the scene she just couldn't stop laughing. So I think she might have been like trying to not corpse on camera, but very obviously Jerry Ryan's corpsing. Send for the man, as another YouTuber would say. But they cut it out, and at least she probably still got paid for being an extra in there. But that's what happens. Sometimes you get edited out as an extra. Now, that state trooper scene that I mentioned before, it was originally longer and contained a plot point, and that was that Dell overshot the drive into Chicago and went into Wisconsin, which resulted in Neil, which at this point you can be like, oh yeah, this is very warranted, being very mad with Dell and chasing him around the car, and this trooper has to get involved, and then the same thing would go from there. Elaine, like, I'm trying to get him home for Thanksgiving. But they reshot it into a simple traffic stop, which works. Of course, if you look very carefully at the scene where the trooper comes off there, it kind of looks like it still says Wisconsin, but it's kind of hard to read, because I'd already read this when I was watching that part of the film. It's a simple traffic stop. It probably works better. Doesn't overstay its welcome too long. And if you added that other thing, it'd be like, then why is he getting like that with Dell? Unless, of course, he's thinking, like, maybe Dell wanted to spend more time with me. It could be a little bit hard to justify, but you probably could in the end. But, you know, you don't want to have this scene overstay its welcome too long. This version of it would be interesting just to watch standalone, because I haven't checked YouTube as I'm recording this to see if they do put it up there. But it is a fun little bit of trivia. Overall, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, as I said on the top of this video, is the Thanksgiving film. Perfect amount of comedy, good amount of drama there, nice little lesson that both characters learn at the end. Nice little sentimental ending. It really hits you right in the feels, and it ends with the right amount of time. And it has a good runtime. It's a 90-minute film, and the actors are pretty good. I love the chemistry between Steve Martin and John Candy. I don't know if this is the only film they made together. I don't have Candy's filmography up in front of me, but if it was, I do kind of wish that they had at least made one more film before John Candy's untimely passing. Rest in peace, John. But it is a nice little time capsule showing where they were at this point in their careers, and, you know, how Hughs can get good performances out of a cast, and how his comedic timing was good when it's spot on. And, of course, as a director, he's pretty good, too. Just the way he lets the camera linger for certain shots, like that aforementioned rental scene, the close-ups and all that. It's like perfect comedy director. Rest in peace, other John. If you have not seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, don't be like me and overwait until you're like, okay, go out there and watch it. Do what I do, rent it. Go and buy the Blu-ray, which I plan on doing pretty soon. Go watch it on TV if you happen to see it's on TV and you want to give it a quick watch. Hey, who knows? You might get one of the scenes that are not in the actual theatrical cut. But it definitely gets the Mar stamp of approval.